What if I told you that every time you avoid discipline, you're not protecting yourself from pain? You're feeding the very shadow that keeps you trapped in cycles of regret, self-betrayal, and quiet desperation? If this resonates with something deep inside you, something you've been avoiding looking at, then please like this video and subscribe to this channel. By the end of this journey together, you'll become a different person. So stay with me until the very end. There's a particular kind of suffering that Jung understood better than most, the suffering that comes not from external circumstances, but from the war we wage against ourselves. It's the pain of knowing what we should do and choosing not to do it. Again and again, you feel it, don't you? That heavy weight in your chest when you scroll instead of create, when you choose comfort over growth, when you promise yourself tomorrow while knowing that tomorrow you'll make the same promise again. This isn't about willpower. This isn't about being lazy or weak. This is about something far more profound, what Jung called the shadow. The shadow is not your enemy. It is the repository of all the unlived life within you. Every time you choose the easy path, every time you avoid the discipline that would set you free, you're feeding energy to this shadow self. But here's what most people don't understand about discipline. We avoid it not because it's hard, but because it threatens the false self we've constructed. The persona that Jung knew was both our protection and our prison. Think about it. When you avoid discipline, what are you really avoiding? The discomfort? Or the person you might become if you actually followed through? The person who wouldn't need the comfortable lies you tell yourself about why things aren't different yet. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And discipline, real discipline, forces you to meet yourself completely, without the buffers, without the excuses, without the elaborate story you've told yourself about why you're stuck. So you run, you Netflix, you scroll, you busy yourself with everything except the one thing that would actually change your life. Because change means death, the death of who you've been. And even if who you've been hasn't made you happy, at least it's familiar. But what if I told you that this avoidance of discipline isn't protecting you from anything? What if it's actually the source of your deepest suffering? What if every time you choose comfort over growth, you're not just avoiding temporary discomfort, you're avoiding your own becoming? This is the first truth Jung would want you to understand. Your resistance to discipline is not a character flaw. It's a symptom of a much deeper fracture, the split between who you are and who you're meant to become. Now, let's go deeper. Because this avoidance of discipline, this self-betrayal, it didn't start with you. It was carefully, systematically programmed into you by a society that profits from your unconsciousness. From the moment you could understand language, you were taught that comfort is the goal, that ease is success, that if something feels difficult, you should find an easier way. The modern world has weaponized your natural desire for comfort, turning it against your growth. But Jung understood something that our comfort-obsessed culture doesn't. Individuation, the process of becoming who you really are, requires friction. It requires choosing the harder path, not because difficulty is virtuous, but because only through friction does the diamond of your authentic self emerge from the coal of your conditioned existence. Machiavelli knew this too, though from a different angle. He understood that real power, comes from the disciplined cultivation of your inner kingdom. But society doesn't want you to have real power. It wants you distracted, dependent, and perpetually seeking external validation. Think about it. Every app on your phone, every advertisement you see, every social media platform is designed to harvest your attention and keep you in cycles of instant gratification. They've turned your dopamine system, your reward circuitry, against you. They've made discipline feel like punishment and instant gratification feel like reward. But this is the great deception. Instant gratification is not reward, it's the theft of your future self's potential. Every time you choose immediate comfort over discipline, you're literally stealing from the person you're meant to become. Nietzsche saw this clearly when he wrote about the last man, the person who seeks only comfort and security, who has given up on becoming anything greater. The last man, Nietzsche warned, would rather blink than strive, would rather consume than create, would rather avoid than overcome. Is this who you've become? The last man, blinking away your potential? The conditioning runs deep. You were taught to seek approval rather than authenticity, to avoid discomfort rather than embrace growth, to follow the crowd rather than forge your own path. And somewhere along the way, you internalized the message that if something is difficult, it must be wrong for you. But Jung knew better. He knew that what we resist most strongly is often what we need most desperately. The very discipline you're avoiding is the discipline that would set you free. The very discomfort you're running from is the discomfort that would birth your authentic self. This is why you'll never avoid discipline again after this, because you're beginning to see that avoiding discipline isn't protecting you from anything. It's keeping you trapped in a smaller version of yourself, a version that was designed by forces that don't have your best interests at heart. Now we come to the most misunderstood aspect of this journey, the necessity of withdrawal. Not withdrawal as escape, but withdrawal as sacred preparation. Jung called this the voluntary confrontation with the unconscious. I call it the conscious choice to become unavailable to everything that keeps you small. This is where most people get it wrong. They think discipline is about forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do. But real discipline, the kind that transforms you at the cellular level, is about becoming so clear about who you're becoming that you naturally withdraw from everything that contradicts that vision. It's not willpower. It's clarity. When you truly understand what you're capable of becoming, when you catch even a glimpse of your unlived potential, you don't have to force yourself to avoid distractions. You withdraw from them naturally, the way you'd naturally step away from a conversation that no longer serves your growth. But society will resist this withdrawal. People will call you antisocial. They'll say you've changed. They'll project their own resistance to growth onto your commitment to becoming. And this is where Machiavelli's wisdom becomes essential. You must become strategically unavailable to the forces that would keep you unconscious. This means saying no to social obligations that drain your energy without feeding your growth. It means turning off your phone during the hours you've dedicated to your becoming. It means choosing solitude over superficial connection, silence over meaningless noise. Jung spent years in what he called his confrontation with the unconscious, period of intense inner work that required him to withdraw from much of his social and professional life. He didn't do this to escape the world, but to prepare himself to engage with it from a place of authentic power rather than unconscious reaction. This withdrawal isn't permanent. It's not about becoming a hermit. It's about creating the sacred space necessary for your transformation. It's about protecting your emerging authentic self from the forces that would keep you trapped in old patterns. Think of it as entering a cocoon. The caterpillar doesn't dissolve itself in the cocoon because it wants to avoid the world. It dissolves itself because transformation requires a protected space where the old form can die and a new form can emerge. Your discipline practice is your cocoon. The time you spend in silence, in reflection, in deliberate practice, this is where your true self is being born. And like any birth, it requires protection from external interference. This is why you can't transform your relationship with discipline while remaining available to all the same inputs that created your current patterns. You must consciously withdraw from the noise, the opinions, the endless stream of distractions that have been keeping you unconscious. But here's what makes this withdrawal sacred rather than selfish. When you emerge from your cocoon of disciplined becoming, you don't return as the same person who entered. You return as someone with something real to offer the world, something authentic, something that can only come from the person who has done the work of becoming themselves. Here's where everything shifts. Here's where you discover that discipline isn't punishment, it's alchemy, the systematic transformation of base impulses into authentic power. Jung understood that psychic energy libido is neither good nor bad. It simply is. The question is not whether you have energy, but how you direct it. Every moment of your life, you're either investing your energy in becoming or spending it on remaining the same. There is no neutral. When you avoid discipline, you're not saving energy, you're bleeding it. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you're literally hemorrhaging life force into maintaining a version of yourself that doesn't fulfill you. It's the most expensive maintenance program you'll ever run, and the return on investment is misery. But when you embrace discipline, real discipline, not the harsh self-punishment that masquerades as discipline, something magical happens. You begin to reclaim your energy from all the places you've been unconsciously spending it. Think about how much energy it takes to maintain your resistance to growth, the mental gymnastics, the elaborate justifications, the constant negotiations with yourself about why today isn't the right day to start, the guilt, the shame, the quiet desperation of knowing you're capable of more, but not accessing that capability. All of that energy, all of it, becomes available when you stop fighting yourself and start working with yourself. This is what Nietzsche meant when he spoke of the will to power. Not power over others, but power over your own impulses, your own reactions, your own choices. The ability to consistently choose your future self over your current comfort. And here's the secret that Jung discovered. When you align your daily actions with your deepest values, when you stop betraying yourself in small ways throughout the day, something in you settles. The internal war ends. The energy you are spending on self-resistance becomes available for self-creation. This is when discipline stops feeling like discipline and starts feeling like coming home to yourself. You wake up, and instead of immediately reaching for your phone, you reach for your journal. Not because you have to, but because you want to meet the person you're becoming. You choose the difficult conversation over the comfortable avoidance, not because you're forcing yourself to, but because you're no longer willing to betray your authentic self for temporary comfort. This is authentic power, not the ability to control others, but the ability to consistently choose who you become in each moment. And once you taste this kind of power, once you experience what it feels like to be aligned with yourself at the deepest level, you'll never want to go back to the exhausting work of maintaining a false self. The irony is that what we call discipline is actually the most natural thing in the world. It's living in alignment with who you really are beneath all the conditioning. It's saying yes to your authentic impulses and no to the impulses that have been programmed into you by a culture that profits from your unconsciousness. This is why you'll never avoid discipline again, because you're beginning to understand that discipline isn't something you have to do. It's something you get to do. It's the privilege of conscious beings to choose their response to life rather than simply react from conditioning. We're near the end of our journey together, and I want to leave you with something that will stay with you long after you close this video. A question that Jung himself wrestled with, that Nietzsche posed to himself in his most honest moments, that every person who has ever achieved anything real has had to answer. Who are you when no one is watching? Not who do you pretend to be, not who do you wish you were, not who you think you should be. Who are you, actually, in the privacy of your own choices, in the secret moments when only you know what you chose? Because here's the truth that cuts through everything else. Your relationship with discipline is your relationship with yourself. Every time you make a promise to yourself and keep it, you're building trust with the most important person in your life, you. Every time you betray that promise, you're eroding that trust. And without self-trust, everything else becomes impossible. You can't trust your dreams because you don't trust your follow-through. You can't trust your vision because you don't trust your consistency. You can't trust your potential because you don't trust your discipline. But when you begin to keep the small promises you make to yourself, when you do what you say you're going to do, when you become reliable to your own growth, something profound shifts in your relationship with possibility itself. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming requires discipline. It requires the daily choice to show up for your own growth, especially when you don't feel like it. This isn't about perfection. This isn't about never failing or never struggling. This is about developing such a deep, loving relationship with your own potential that you're willing to do the work of becoming, not because someone else expects it of you, but because you've fallen in love with who you're becoming. Think about someone you love deeply. Would you break promises to them constantly? Would you show up inconsistently? Would you prioritize everyone and everything else over their well-being and growth? Of course not. So why do you do this to yourself? The person you're becoming, your highest, most authentic self, deserves the same care, the same consistency, the same devotion that you would give to anyone you love. Actually, more. Because your relationship with yourself is the foundation for every other relationship in your life. When you truly understand this, when you truly feel it in your bones, discipline stops being something you avoid and becomes something you embrace as an act of self-love. The highest form of self-care isn't bubble baths and retail therapy. It's showing up consistently for your own growth. It's choosing your future self over your current comfort, not as an act of aggression toward yourself, but as an act of profound love for who you're becoming. As we reach the end of our time together, I want you to understand something crucial. Everything I've shared with you isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been, beneath all the conditioning, beneath all the fear, beneath all the stories you've told yourself about why you can't change. Jung called this process individuation, not becoming someone different, but becoming who you actually are when you strip away everything that isn't authentically you. The discipline we've been talking about isn't about forcing yourself into some foreign mold. It's about the gentle, persistent work of removing everything that obscures your true nature. Your resistance to discipline has never been about laziness. It's been about fear that if you actually applied yourself consistently, if you actually became who you're capable of becoming, you might outgrow the life you've built around your smaller self. You might have to leave behind relationships that only work when you stay small. You might have to release identities that have kept you safe but unfulfilled. This fear is understandable. But here's what Jung knew, what Nietzsche discovered, what every person who has ever transformed their life has learned. The person you're afraid of becoming is actually the person you've always been, waiting patiently beneath the surface for you to have the courage to meet them. The discipline you've been avoiding isn't asking you to become someone else. It's asking you to become yourself. Your truest, most authentic, most powerful self. The self that doesn't need external validation because it's connected to something deeper than opinion. The self that doesn't avoid challenges because it knows that challenges are how diamonds are formed. And here's the beautiful paradox. Once you stop avoiding discipline and start embracing it as a path to authenticity, you discover that it was never really difficult. What was difficult was the constant energy expenditure of resisting your own growth, of fighting against your own nature, of trying to remain small in a universe that is constantly expanding. When you align with your authentic nature, when you stop betraying yourself in small ways throughout the day, when you begin to make choices from love rather than fear, discipline becomes as natural as breathing. Not because you've forced yourself to change, but because you've finally stopped forcing yourself to stay the same. So as you leave this space, as you return to your life with these ideas settling into your consciousness, I want you to carry this with you. You are not broken. You do not need to be fixed. You need to be freed from the conditioning that convinced you that comfort is more important than growth. Freed from the programming that taught you to fear your own power. Freed from the story that says you're the kind of person who avoids discipline. You are not the kind of person who avoids discipline. You are the kind of person who forgot, temporarily, that discipline is love made manifest. Love for your future self. Love for your potential. Love for the contribution you're here to make. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, but it continues with the second step and the third and the fourth. Not because you have to, but because you finally remembered who you are when no one is watching. You are someone who keeps promises to themselves. You are someone who shows up for their own growth. You are someone who chooses love over fear, growth over comfort, becoming over remaining. You always have been. You just forgot for a while. Welcome home to yourself.